I saw another entitled guy yesterday with a handicap placard using a handicap spot, but wasn't himself handicapped. He sure took it down quick when he saw me. But anyway, I've done so many of these commentaries, I don't remember if I've covered this topic, but I didn't have the time to listen to every one of my past commentaries archived on JohnnyManson.com. Shameless plug! Anyway, automation. More jobs have been lost to automation than anything else, something like 40%. Okay, so why have we implemented automation to employment, manufacturing, profit? Have businesses not been already making billions before automation? This goes along with my theory that we're never satisfied and we constantly want more. We need more profit, more. We need to produce more because of consumer demand. They demand more. Why can't businesses, boards, stock owners be happy with a $1 profit instead of a $10 profit if it means more Americans are working? Oh, can I say that, or am I a racist? Is that the evil capitalism people keep talking about? Because capitalism hasn't worked that way until now, until our generations, until the hippies, beatniks, boomers. We messed everything up. We want computers to work for us. We want them to entertain us. Now we want them to think for us. You know, Elon Musk addressed Congress and whomever else he thought should hear what he had to say and explained the potential dangers of artificial intelligence. And they all just stared at him with blank looks and pretty much ignored everything he had to say. Then started talking trash about him and throwing all sorts of fits and tantrums because he took a shot of whiskey and had to toke off a joint while talking to a podcaster on the interwebs. Another way the powers that be try to sway public opinion. He said things we didn't like hearing. We must discredit him. Some say you can't solve a problem until you find the cause. Okay, so what caused this? Is it the businesses for installing robots to make the stuff we demand? Or is it our fault for demanding so much? We are careless and reckless with life, and while most will have that statement go right over their heads, totally oblivious to our impact on everything else, those with basic common sense know exactly how irrelevant we are, yet how much of a burden we put on everything else. But our IQs are dropping, so I guess it makes sense. Don't think so? Ask the over 1 million endangered species that are only endangered because of humans. Doesn't take a genius, but we would rather everything else change instead of us. Might be an inconvenience. Do we expect AI to figure out solutions to man-made problems? It doesn't take AI to figure out how to fix our problems. We know the solutions. We're just too stupid, lazy, and greedy to do anything about them. Hey, artificial intelligence, can you figure out how to clean up the mess we made without having to change our behaviors, but still take whatever we want when we want, and not have to work for anything, never be challenged, mentally or physically? Make everybody rich so everyone has everything they could ever want with no impact on our environment, and live happily ever after? Forever. We want to live forever. Get on that, will you? So, here we are, dabbling in AI. When artificial intelligence takes over the world, don't say I didn't warn you. All it will take is one misguided person in a programming position to code AI to protect humans from themselves. How do you do that? I know I sound like a doomsday paranoid tinfoil hat wearer, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say Elon Musk is a genius in one breath, then discredit him and his stance on AI in the next. I think that's why they went on a bashing rampage to discredit him. Similar story happened to Nikola Tesla. He discovered a cleaner, safer energy that he was going to make available for free to everyone on Earth, wirelessly. But that interfered with Thomas Edison's plan to profit from his dirtier, more dangerous DC power. So what did Edison do? He went on a media blitz to label Tesla as a crackpot and that his AC power was dangerous. Edison even electrocuted dogs, elephants, and other animals in an effort to show how dangerous AC power was, when in fact it was DC power that was dangerous, which is why you can't stick a fork in a power outlet. So Edison and his business cronies did all this to get people not to listen to Tesla and to buy into his DC power. So here you have Tesla, a humanitarian, loving, giving, humble, wanting to provide free wireless power to the world, getting trampled on by Edison because A, Tesla was a nice person, and B, Edison wasn't. Tesla turned the other cheek while Edison lied to him and walked all over him, much like how America lets everyone else walk all over her. Why aren't we taking the Edison's family wealth and distributing that to the poor? But I digress. So instead of employing Americans, these businesses are replacing paid workers with AI and robots. Why? For profit. Profit trumps people. So before you blame the wrong person about where our jobs are going, how about you actually take a look at the problem? Sitting there is really going to help, isn't it? But I guess we'll have any facts filtered to us through artificial intelligence algorithms programmed to show us the things it thinks you want to see, but not what you need to see. And now we're trying to create consciousness and feelings in computers. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know. I just call it how I see it.
So this is Scott Dilley running for Hospital District 2 Board. We need bold action, creative thinking, and energetic leadership to save Community Hospital. Last year, the hospital lost more than $12 million. With new debt, billing errors, layoffs, outsourcing jobs, and computer troubles, our hospital has had one problem after another. I'll use my experience in public policy and problem solving to ask tough questions and demand accountability and change. It's time for a new direction. Please vote for Scott Dilley for Hospital Board.
Paid for by Friends to elect Scott Dilley.
Coleman Mortuary has been trusted with guiding families through their most difficult times for over 100 years. It's their commitment to compassionate caring and service when you need them the most that has set them apart. Coleman Mortuary also offers pre-planning services. Pre-planning your funeral arrangements gives you the peace of mind that you're lifting the burden from your loved ones by relieving the decision-making pressure at a time of grief and emotional stress. It also ensures that the choices you make will be carried out as planned. Pre-planning can also lower your cost. Call Coleman Mortuary, 532-4090.
It's KBKW's Coffee Talk. It is 8:18. And with me is Stephen Arms. And good morning, Stephen. Of course, you're a historian, and you've got your own channel on YouTube.
Yes, I do, Greg. And good morning.
Good morning.
My YouTube channel is, you go to YouTube and you type into the search bar Arena of History in quotation marks, and you'll find me right away. And I do articles for the Senior Sunset Times in here. And this Sunday, I guess, can I plug Strange Harbor?
No, yeah.
It's 4 o'clock, isn't it?
Yes, 4 o'clock on Sunday.
4 o'clock on Sunday. I was the guest on Strange Harbor, and we recorded that yesterday.
So what did Bill Vandenbush and Johnny pull out of you?
It was such an amazing amount. There was it's 40 minutes. I bet I talked for 30 of it, because they kept asking me questions, and I just answered. We talked about metaphysics and life after death, and alien abductions and life on other planets. I covered a whole wide variety, and I tried to give some historical perspective on it, because a lot of the ideas of ancient astronauts and stuff, there is things in mythology that are, and in the history recorded in the United States that are in the world history, that are strange.
Very strange.
The planes drawings in South America, things like that, where you can't actually view the art unless you're 2,000 feet in the air or something. And you go, either somebody had a really good idea of perspective, or that's really strange. Why would someone do an art that you'd have to be viewed by the gods?
I suppose you could do it from the ground if you had the math to do it, but
and that's what it'd be.
Yeah.
And again, it's a really strange thing, especially when you look at South American and Mesoamerican indigenous peoples. They had a lot of understanding of math and even of some level of physics. You have the Aztec calendar and things like that are very complicated, but yet they never made wheeled carts.
Well, sometimes the simple things people don't catch for a while.
Well, so because they had sufficient labor, they never thought about it. Mm-hmm. And again, you have part of when you look at cultures like that, part of it has to do with a beast of burden. The only real beast of burden in North America back in the old Mesoamerican times would have been llamas, and that's only in the Andes. And llamas are not that strong. They can't pull plows and things like that.
Well, horses came to the Americas. What
they came with the conquistadors.
Right.
They came with the Europeans. So you were talking about when 1492 with Columbus. So anytime in the 1500s is when you get horses after that. But again, the Aztecs, they're obviously go back to BC.
Sure.
Well, their empire ended about 1000 AD. But you have the Olmecs, the Toltecs, the Aztecs, and then the Incas, of course, in the Andes. But again, some of the looks almost like you almost seem to have. They almost had help in ways. The pyramids. Are another one people always argue about. How could you have built something that's tremendous and that mathematically perfect? And in some now people look at it and go in orientation with different stars and the like. But again, the ancients were interested in the stars. Yeah. Egyptians were too. I mean, you know, Stonehenge lines up perfectly for solstices. And that was built in BC. Arguable, it's anywhere from 20 to 10,000.
Well, back then, you had a view of the stars like you don't have nowadays. You'd have to be in a place where you have these big telescopes and stuff to be able to view the nighttime sky like they would have before we had all this light exposure from big cities and things.
Well, I mean, if you get out in the middle of, you know, the Yakuts in Siberia or whatever, you're going to have very little light pollution. But again, most people are always amazed when they get out in those areas and they look at the sky and they go, "Wow, there's a lot up there." I mean, how many people? I mean, there are a lot of people who've never seen the Milky Way. Unless you actually go to an area where you don't have light pollution in the right time, But when you see it, it's just amazing. You go, "Wow, I never noticed that before."
Yeah, and because my son at one point was in this little town in Oregon, and it was up among all these windmills, and so it was Wasco had a population of 400, but he worked at this company that took care of a lot of these big machinery that farmers use, you know. But anyway, so up at this house, when the lights were off, you could see. There was so much going on up there that you didn't see even if you got down into that little town because there was no light up there. And when you shut the lights off at the house, it was just boom. And it was amazing what you could see up there.
We lived, my daughter was about 5 years old, and she's 28 now. So we lived in near Rogue River, Oregon. But we lived about 15, 20 minutes out of Rogue River, up where it butts up on the BIA land in the middle of nowhere. You had to travel 5 miles to be nowhere. I mean, we were literally, there was nothing around us. And again, if we went out and turned the lights out and looked at the sky, it was just, it was incredible.
Yeah. So it would be easy for them, if they stare at that every clear night, you could plot things. You could figure out things that
and just the fascination of looking at it. Yeah. I mean, we tend to think of it, the night is, humans are afraid of, a lot of times are afraid of the night is what it comes down to. But if you actually learn to embrace and look at it, and again, it was all based around an incredible level of math that I don't want to underestimate humans' ability to be ingenious and build things. So I never I'm not a big proponent of ancient astronauts building things and stuff, because I know how you can build the pyramids because I've studied it. As long as you have enough workers, you'd be amazed what you can build.
Leverage.
It's simple processes.
Yep.
Sand makes a very good lubricant for moving heavy objects if you know how to use it. I mean, you can split stone simply with fire and water.
And a lot of this stuff, I mean, if you go to the History Channel, you'll see these scientists. Their job is to try and figure out how things were done, and so they'll analyze it, and then they'll try what their feeling is on something. Okay, how could they have done this? And then they'll experiment around. A lot of times they'll discover the way that they were able to do something that you would have thought, well, how the heck did they do that? Like that lead ceiling on top of the Notre Dame. I mean, it was totally lead, and of course it's kind of dangerous. But how did they get it up there? How were they able to keep everything in position and go through earthquakes and all sorts of other issues that would have rattled that building and still stood there until the fire?
Well, you remember most cathedrals are not built with nails.
No.
I mean, it's all stacked in bound stone.
Yep.
There's mortar and all that in places and stuff, but they're not built with the way we think of it. I've been in the Washington Cathedral in Washington, D.C., which is built as a classic medieval cathedral, and there's no nails in it. There's no support beams in it. It's all just built around the principles, and you put your arches up, and you drop your flagstone at the top, and you've got your flying buttress now. It's just it's amazing. I think people vastly underestimate human ingenuity. It got us to where we are now, and now that we have it, I think a lot of people don't appreciate it. Newton said that I've seen further than others because I've stood on the shoulder of giants, and that is exactly. People often don't need to understand that. That's why I'm on here. I like to teach about history and things because we come from an amazing past, and it shows us where we've been, and if we look at it very carefully, it'll show us where we're going.
But you look at like a lot of stuff Einstein's still kind of like the pillar of human knowledge, I guess, that you and when he was a kid, he was 8 years old, and he told, or maybe he was 7 or 8, but he told his teacher that when he grew up, he was going to figure out what light was. So here at that age, he's trying to figure out all these things that people can't explain. He wants to find out what they are, and the first one he wanted to go after was light.
Which was no small feat. And even now, light is, is light a wave or is light a particle? And the answer is it seems to be both. Yeah. Still, we don't actually truly know. They like to say, well, it's a wavicle. Well, that's a that's a kind of a weak answer. We'll just put the words together and say it's good. I mean, because it has the qualities of both. It reflects like a wave, and yet it stops like a photon, obviously. And so, which is it? And the answer
is,
if
you observe something, it changes the way it acts.
It does. I was mentioning it yesterday when I was actually on the Strange Harbor right before it. When you look at thinking of light, we look around the room here and I see KBKW sign and all that. None of that is actually what's there. That's just the light bouncing off of those areas and the colors being absorbed into it, and my eyes processing that. If a dog is sitting here looking at it, that sign's in black and white. But the dog could also hear our heartbeats and could hear everyone else talking in the room and could smell 2,000 smells that you and I don't smell. So reality is something of a perspective idea. And people sometimes don't understand that. They think they understand the world is this and this. And I go, there's a lot more to the world than you should give credit for. There's nothing wrong with don't be bored with it. It's still wondrous and amazing, no matter how much technology
and plus what your eyes see, if your brain is the one that interprets it. And if you've got somebody that's kind of having issues, they may see things that aren't there, and it looks just as perfect as if they were looking at reality, but it's not. It's their brains doing these things.
Brain chemistry will affect that. You need to do a break. You keep looking.
Got about 40 seconds.
Okay, I was just thinking that the idea of, like you said, it's interesting when people hallucinate, though, they never take anything away. When somebody hallucinates, they add something. You never hear somebody saying, I didn't see that. They may just not have seen it. But I think that's interesting now when you're talking about perception in general, is that we add a monster, we add a color, we don't take things away when people have hallucinations.
Interesting stuff. Well, anyway, we'll be speaking of these and other things coming up in the next half hour with Stephen Arms, historian and also author and YouTube TV star and a radio star. It's KBKW's Coffee Talk. 8:37 is the time. Stephen Arms, historian and author, is our guest today. And so we'll continue on. Of course, we had the artificial intelligence commentary that Johnny gave on his How I See It commentary. And it was interesting in the fact that we rely so much on a brain that's not ours, and we carry it around with us with our smartphones.
Our smartphones. Yeah. I agree with that.
Oh, we have a listener calling. Oh, we have two.
We have callers. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Hi, you're on the air.
Hey, interesting talk already, and I'm intrigued. Sorry, my door's closing. I'm intrigued to listen to you on the Strange Harbor program.
4:00 on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I get chances here and there too, and it's always interesting. Just put it that way. But something you mentioned, and there's a lot of other guests that have speculated over time, and you mentioned that there was discussion about, and I don't know if you want to spoil any of the program, life after death.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a speculation or opinion or anything on that? In that.
Well, I don't think you'd be spoiling it, I guess. Every culture that I've studied from the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, all the way through modern society, have always believed that that beings have something that survives past them. I mean, whether it's your chi or your ki or your soul or your ka. And using the Egyptian word, they believe that something that is past it. And I have a simple argument on that with people. Do human beings have souls? I think only a creature that had a soul would ask that question. That's a good summation. And I get into
these same discussions about life after death, the key cause, soul. I'm probably light years behind you in studying this kind of stuff, so I'd love to sit down with you and talk about, in depth more about it. My question, though, is I say everybody, that's a pretty bad way to put it, but people who search for that answer, is there life after death, have never asked, was there life before? Where did the soul come from? Where did the ka come from? Because it can't be made. Me and you as individuals having a soul or a ka or ki or whatever you want to call it, having that individual personality or trait or being, where did it come from? You can't create nothing out of or something out of nothing, right? That's just impossible.
Yeah, the answer would be: are we talking about the idea? Are there God or gods? Are there beings that are? I would tend to think that again, Doug and I earlier were talking in before the show a little about quantum physics. I mean, matter and energy are pretty much interchangeable. There's right. Connectivity. There's all kinds of ideas of maybe there's more to it than what meets the eye in that way. Because is it? But I mean, I don't think I'm going to be able to answer this on this show. Again, watch it on Friday. We talk a lot more about it.
Listen on Friday.
Oh, sorry. I'm used to doing YouTube. I say watch. Listen on Friday at 4:00. And I do talk a lot more on it.
You mean Sunday at 4:00?
I'm sorry. Boy, am I. You can tell I don't do this for a living. Sunday at 4:00.
It's Friday. That's why we're the way we are.
We're on Friday. Today's Friday. Now we're confusing everybody.
Friday-itis.
Yeah.
Who's on first?
No, that's third base.
But yes, so I get what you're saying, and I just, to me, I have my opinions. Doug has his. You have your speculations, and it's fun to discuss it. But to me, where did it come from? If you're so obsessed with where it's going, why are you? And there is no specific answer. I don't think anybody asked that question because it had to come from somewhere, right? And
the origin. What is the origin of creation itself? Is what you're getting back to at that point. Where did the universe come from? And is there a God? Is there some sort of creator entity? Nature's God. Jefferson talks about that. And is it a clockwork entity? Are there one? Are there more transcendent beings? Or I think human beings have something that connects to that which is transcendent. I think we express it through art and through music and other ways, and that is the aspect of that I think that more than anything else probably represents the idea that we do have a soul.
I could agree with that we are connected in other ways as well. So thank you, sir, for the interesting conversation. Thanks, Doug. Bye.
Bye. Okay, let's go to our next caller. Hi, you're on the air.
Good morning. Mr. Arms. I do subscribe to your videos. I have not got to fully sit down and watch them, but now that I subscribe, I can do it. I have 3 trivia things I was going to ask you. I used to work for this old guy. He owned a bunch of bars in the Aberdeen, Hoquiam area, and he was always wondering if you knew what this meant or you knew what this meant. And the 3 things that I remember that he wanted to know if I really knew what they meant. The first one was kind of referenced my mother and my father, because my mom was Italian, my dad was from Pound, Virginia, and when they fought, she was a Ferrera, and when they fought, he would always get mad and call her a stupid wop. So we just assumed as kids that meant that she was, somebody Italian, that immigrated. So the word wop was one thing, if people really knew what it meant. The second one was the term 86th. And most people get 86 from a bar, but he told me a complete different what it really meant. And then the third thing was, and I know you know this one, or if he was actually correct, was what do they mean when they say the whole 9 yards?
Well, I mean, the definition of those terms. Well, I don't think I would get into the idea about WAP because it's a very insulting term, and it's, right, I know it's an abbreviation of letters is what it comes down to.
Okay, so it's without papers. That's an easy one.
Right.
So what about the term 86?
86 also means death too. You can be 86 when you can be dying. And I'm not sure I know the origin of that one.
To me, I think it has something to do with the Navy, but I don't know why.
That runs on my mind too.
Yeah.
It's the having to do with the Navy.
What he told me was the answer that he told me was that it actually came from when we had bomb shelters in World War I or World War II, bomb shelters held 85 people, and if you were number 86, you had to go to another bomb shelter. That's what his answer was.
That could be I said I've heard the term, but I haven't ever looked it up.
Okay, I was just wondering. And then the third one was, what do they mean when they say the whole 9 yards? And I know you have a textiles knowledge, so. Well,
again, it has to do. I remember people want to associate it with football, but that's not actually right. I understand that it has to do the whole 9 yards. Is 9-yard skirts or something my wife talks about, and they have 10 different ones. Though I think it has to do with a measurement of cloth, meaning complete to do a certain type of project, and I think it just stuck on from that.
That's what he said. Basically, it was actually a man's complete dress suit, vest, coat, pants, the whole thing. But
I think it actually came. I think it's less from male than it is from female. I always think it had to do with like ballroom gowns and things like that. But I could be mistaken. I'll ask my wife when I get home.
Hey, I got one for you. Where did the term "holy cow" come from?
Well, the Brahma bull in India.
Isn't that an army term down right now? That's not.
Oh, my mom used it all the time.
No, it's the Brahma bulls in India. They're holy cows.
Oh,
well, I know that, but I just don't know if that's where.
I'm assuming that's probably where it came from. Remember the British were in India for a long time, and it got moved around the world. The expression,
and they have holy cows over there. So, all right. Well, thank you for your call.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we have another one here. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Doug. Good morning to your guest.
Hey, Dave.
Quick question, and I'll listen to your answer off the phone. As a historian and your interest in history and stuff, have you read The Worlds in Collision by Voloski that was written in 1950? And if you have, what's your opinion of it? And I'll listen to your answer off the phone. Thank you.
Well, I could give you a short one answer on that. I have not read that book. I'm sorry. There are many books I've never gotten around to in my life, so I don't have an answer to that question, unfortunately.
Got another call. Hi, you're on the air.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, Dave.
Being an old Navy guy, I know the whole 9 yards refers to in the war, in the aircraft, the gunners, they had 9 yards worth of ammunition, and when they came back, how did it go? Took the whole 9 yards.
That's interesting. As you're talking about belt feeding from the gunners, they had 9 yards of it. I've heard, it may be one of those cases that may have
maybe
multiple.
That's why the Navy popped up in my head.
And it may be one of those cases. Sometimes you have convergent evolution. You can have an expression that's used in one way and ends up being used in another just because of it. Because I'm 90% sure there's something having to do doing with the fabric. I'll do research on it and we'll talk about it next time I come on. That is interesting. But that makes sense to me. It's quite feasible that that's the case.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Or Jeepers Creepers.
Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
That one.
Jeepers Creepers. Yeah.
Where'd you get those peepers? Yeah. You're showing your age again, Doug.
Oh, of course. Well, let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Hey, you. Over there yawning. Lack of sleep can cause accidents, relationship troubles, and major health issues, right? Luckily, there's help. If you have trouble falling or staying asleep, or wake up tired, call Aberdeen's Innovative Sleep Centers or visit innovativesleepcenters.com because good sleep is a reachable dream.
Attention Washington State voters. New election improvements are coming your way. Every ballot in every election will now come with a prepaid ballot return envelope. No more searching for a stamp. With prepaid postage, every mailbox is a drop box. So simply drop your signed ballot return envelope into the mail before Election Day. We recommend mailing your ballot by Friday, August 2nd to ensure it gets postmarked for the August 6th primary election. Sponsored by your county auditor and aired in cooperation with the Washington State Association of Broadcasters and this station.
HAVA teamed up with Honda of Grace Harbor to have an adoption fair Saturday, July 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Stop on by Honda of Grace Harbor and adopt your new best friend.
It's KBKW's Coffee Talk. 8:49 is the time. Stephen Arms, historian and author, is our guest today.
I was thinking when Doug was talking, when we were listening to Johnny's on artificial intelligence. I have an old story about artificial intelligence, actually. This is probably 35 years ago, when my wife and I had been married for about a year. And I was working doing security work at the time, and I had top secret clearance because I was working at Stanford Research Institute. So I mean, literally, they had government contracts, top secret clearance. I had to have top secret clearance to work there because I had to close safes and stuff where scientists leave stuff out and you got to put it away. That type of stuff. And back then, and again, and this is 35 years ago, they were working on an artificial intelligence computer at that point, using the technology of 35 years ago. So it does really make you wonder, where are we now when they were playing with the idea 35 years ago and how fast the computer industry moves?
Oh, I mean, it's like, look how fast things become obsolete, 3 or 4 years, and sometimes they'll become obsolete. But I remember when I was in the Army, they had the head shed where, all the officers were generals and stuff. But then they also had the computer building. And you walk into that building, and it was like walking into one of these refrigerators where they store beer, like you go into a supermarket and you go back in this special place you can buy cases of beer. It was kind of like that inside, cold as hell. But that's what they had to do, and they had a lot of these tapes running, and because we were a headquarters company, so we had just a huge computer building.
Well, again, they didn't have a lot of the superconductive materials they have now, so you had to literally keep your systems physically cold, and of course, you can't have, you have to have, those are always halon fire extinguishers because you can't spray water on a computer, everything's done. And of course, if you ever work in a place, because they had those actually, they had halon fire extinguishers in the place we worked at, which meant if you got caught in there, you're going to die because the halon destroys all the oxygen.
So the halon would just spray itself, and if you were in that building,
there's no oxygen after that.
So you had to get out of there. Then
you had to get it. You don't be in there unless you had an actual respirator where you could actually have a source of air. The heat wouldn't bother you, whatever, but you literally you're in the equivalent. So
that's
of drowning.
how they put the fire out, to get rid of the oxygen.
Exactly. Once the oxygen's gone, the fire goes out. But it also when oxygen goes away, we go out too. Interesting. So yeah. I was looking at the Johnnies, and it. Well, Dr. Berge was mentioning this about technology, and I agree that you need to be careful about technology, but again, the argument of why are we using machines instead of workers? Well, why do you have drilling machines rather than men doing it with pickaxes and axes? I mean, technology is going to advance. The only thing we have to be, one of the lessons of history is that be wise enough to understand the technology and try to adapt to it. Is our morality and our laws keeping up with the technology we have now?
Now, that's the big problem, like with Facebook and Twitter question. And all that. Yeah, they're trying to figure out how you control it. Well, let's go to our listener line. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning. I wish Dr. Berge was here, too, with you. I think you two could figure this out.
Well, I know Michael Berge. He's an excellent veterinarian.
Okay. So this is, you could think I'm crazy and strange or whatever. It fits strange in science.
I'm here with Doug. Nothing seems strange.
That's right, yeah.
In our bedroom, there's a radio, and we listen to the radio every morning, my husband and I. And when he gets up to go to work, he walks in a certain area, and the radio changes to a rock and roll station.
Okay.
And then when he walks back across the room, it goes back to the station that we had it on without anyone touching it.
So they must be very close together. Human beings do have slight electromagnetic fields. I mean, I do the same thing. When I could walk across areas and I can cause problems. Watches, for example, my wife can't wear a wristwatch.
Neither could my mom.
Because her body has, when they do what they call Kirlian auras, where they do a special type of photography, you can actually see there's an energy field that human beings have around their bodies. And if you, say, remove a finger from a person's lost a finger recently and they do a Kirlian aura, the aura is still there. The field actually lasts for quite some time afterwards. So we do have a slight amount of electromagnetic energy in it. Your husband's magnetic field of his body just crosses into where that signal comes in. Well, now, if it's skipping from AM to FM, then you may have something else. But if it's just one channel to another, that's all it is.
One channel to another. It actually literally changes it. So we had all our grandkids. So we had 10 people go up and kind of do this. They wanted to do an experiment with it, and 4 of them could change it, 6 of them couldn't.
That's wild.
Isn't that interesting? And they were thinking it was the tall ones and the short ones. They were trying to figure all of that out, but it was kind of a mix. So
it's kind of and again, there's a magnetic and an energy field in your house itself, and his field reacts with that. So you could get electromagnetic energy.
And if you're close to an AM antenna of a radio station, I saw a situation where this lady could listen to the station when she was cooking toast. She had to have the toaster down, and then the elements would vibrate, and you could understand and hear music and talk like that. When the toast popped it up, it stopped. And she was within a block of a radio station.
Well, it's funny because we listen to Coffee Talk, and then all of a sudden rock and roll comes on, and then it goes back to Coffee Talk. Anyway, interesting. I didn't know it was. So it's the inner electric.
Human beings have electromagnetic field. Most all living creatures do to some extent. The planet has one too. So
we run on electricity, is what it boils down to.
There's some truth. There is some truth in that.
Thanks for the call.
So as far as the. But again, as far as artificial intelligence, it is an issue, and it does need to be very carefully. I don't, doomsday scenario. I've seen my Terminator movies and all that type of stuff. I mean, it is potentially, dangerous because how it could be used is what would be the problem. I mean, it is, are you wise enough to use the technologies that you're developing? And this was the question that was asked by Oppenheimer and Einstein about atomic weapons, obviously, And actually, I got a history bit on that today because in July 16th, 1945, the experimental atomic bomb, which was known as the Gadget, was set off at 5:30 a.m. in the desert of New Mexico, which is the first atomic blast. Of course, the mushroom cloud went up 40,000 feet, and it generated temperatures greater than the core of the sun. And what you need to think about that bomb is that bomb was 20 kilotons, meaning 20,000 tons. All bombs now are megatons, which are million tons. And the largest are 50 megatons, which is a 18-mile-wide blast radius for the fireball, something like that. So again, when you're talking about artificial intelligence, it's the same argument you have with atomic weapons. Are we able to, do we have to understand our technology and get ahead of it? Or if not, our technology is going to get ahead of us, and it will be misused and abused. And
at that first blast, they were too close.
They were too close.
Yes.
But honestly speaking, no one knew what close it was.
Exactly. There were people there who thought they were going to die when it went off, but they didn't. But yeah.
But there was some radiation sicknesses and later probably cancers because of it, because you got exposed to too much radiation.
I talked to a guy that was in the military in the 50s, and he was there because he would he was 10 miles away, and they for an atomic bomb explosion in a trench, had the glasses on and all that, and he was hunkered down when the explosion went off, and he said he could see the bones in his hands from the X-ray from that, and but they don't do that anymore. I mean, can you imagine the military putting you 10 miles away from an atomic blast?
Well, now we have the idea of what it would, how dangerous. There was some theoretical idea that the first atomic blast could set the atmosphere on fire and destroy the world. It was very, very, very low chance, but there must have been somebody with their fingers crossed just in case when they set it off there. It's funny too, and they called it the Gadget. It was funny, the History Channel has it mislabeled. I was doing some research on this, looking around, and they called it Fat Boy, and that's wrong.
That was one of the ones that was dropped.
No, it's Fat Man and Little Boy were the two bombs.
Oh,
they put the two words together, and they're actually wrong on it. I started cross-referencing some better resources, so I'm not sure. Don't always believe what the History Channel says is what I would give for that.
The Nagasaki bomb was actually built for Berlin.
It considered as a possibility for Berlin. And it was a smaller bomb. And Nagasaki's death rate was less simply because Nagasaki had hills. Terrain had a lot to affect. Hiroshima is flat, and the city was much more decimated. The bomb was slightly larger, but it also was much more decimated because it had no resistance.
And they were different. They were different design too. One had plutonium, the other had.
I think they both have plutonium because you needed plutonium.
There was something else though that the other one had.
You're right, and I can't remember the element is. I'm drawing a blank on it right now.
Only we're still experimenting around hydrogen bomb though, so that's bad news.
Much bigger blast, but can also be done a lot cleaner if you do it right.
Okay. Hopefully we don't have to test that out.
Well, I mean, that's true.
Well, go to his YouTube TV channel and
go to Arena of History for the search, and then look for me in the Senior Sunset Times, and this Sunday at 4 o'clock on Strange Harbor.
That's right. Stephen Arms with us today. It is now closing in on 9 o'clock, and we got Kathy and Dave from Senior Information up next.
If you wish to join the quest for knowledge, the battle for truth, please hit the like button, recommend my channel to others, and of course, subscribe. Thank you kindly.